Today, we chat live with Chris Grandpre on episode 19 of Modern Business.
Welcome, I'm Ryan Hicks, and this is Modern Business, the podcast to learn from franchise business leaders and explore new business technology. Our community is about sharing knowledge and tools that help us achieve our goals in business and beyond. Thanks for being here, and welcome to Modern Business.
Chris Grandpre is the chairman and CEO of Outdoor Living Brands, which has more than 350 franchise locations under the umbrella. They're growing. They have 5 industry-leading franchise systems, which we will learn about each of those in the first part of the podcast. And during the podcast, we also dive into some great topics, including how to pick a business that is protected and insulated from trends in the market, something that won't get Amazoned or one of the tech giants could take out. We'll talk about how his brands use modern technology to automate communications and make life easy for local operators. And we discuss one of their brands that has a socially responsible twist, and we get into a little bit of a millennial conversation because they have some millennial franchisees. And I really enjoyed a story that Chris shared regarding a specific lesson he learned early on from one of his mentors. We dive into that and so much more. Please keep in mind 2 things as you listen to this episode. First, we did this live at the IFA Convention Hall in Phoenix. We sat down actually before the conference began. It was really quiet. And I kid you not, right when we hit record, there was a forklift that started working away like right behind us. And so you'll get a chuckle at that. It's not too bad, but you'll hear it back there. Chris and I don't believe in retakes, so we just rolled with it. And secondly, I'm oftentimes a road warrior, and the mic that I use got a little bit damaged. So when we were passing it back and forth, I think you can hear a little bit of noise. But on Modern Business, it's about good people and good content, so I'm positive you'll enjoy this sit down with the really great leader, Mr. Chris Grandpre. Enjoy. I want to give Ashley and Andie over at Fish Consulting a major shout out for making this connection and setting this up, and also Ben Kliever the Great for providing excellent audio engineering. Thanks, guys. Welcome back to Modern Business. We are at the IFA convention, IFA 2018. We're here in the convention hall, so there's some background beeping. We apologize for that. But I am sitting here with the chairman and CEO of Outdoor Living Brands, Mr. Chris Grandpre. Chris Grandpre. Welcome to Modern Business.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
So the very first question, tell us a little bit about Outdoor Living Brands. You have many great concepts, but give us the 30,000 square foot overview. Tell us about Outdoor Living Brands.
Sure. We have 5 different franchise business concepts that are all centered in the outdoor lifestyle home services space. First concept is a business called Archadeck, where we design and build all kinds of outdoor living spaces, from decks to patios, outdoor kitchens, outdoor fireplaces, pergolas, gazebos, sunrooms. Our second concept is a business called Outdoor Lighting Perspectives, where we will light the facade of a home, highlight the landscape elements, light the backyard living spaces, keep it looking nice, and let the customers enjoy it late into the evening. Our third business is called Mosquito Squad. It's an outdoor pest control business to keep the mosquitoes, fleas, and ticks away from the outdoor spaces. And then we also have a business called Renew Crew, which is an exterior cleaning and protection company. So any kind of exterior hard surface where dirt and mold and mildew will grow, we have a business that will clean that surface, apply a colorant if needed, and then apply a protectant to keep that material looking nice. And then lastly, our most recent franchise concept is a business that we launched last year called Conserva Irrigation. And it's a repair and maintenance irrigation business with an underlying water conservation theme.
Got it. Thanks for the overview. Why franchise? So you have these 5 great brands. Is it 5 total in the portfolio? You have these 5 great brands. Why the franchise business model as opposed to building it another way?
We're huge believers in the franchise business model because we're able to package our business models that we've developed and proven out over time, backed by all the operating systems that support that model, along with the brand, And then we partner with local entrepreneurs who bring the passion, the drive, the energy, and the capital to execute that model in the local level. And it allows us to scale our businesses even faster than if we were to do it simply in a company-owned store model.
Yeah. Do you have a brand? I'm just rapid firing different questions here. Do you have a brand that in your portfolio that you think would best suit a millennial who has some capital to deploy and they want to go operate their own franchise business? Do you have a particular brand that you think would be most fit towards that age group?
It's a great question, and it's hard to answer because it's sort of like, do you like one of your children more than others? We believe all of our brands and our business models are great. I think what I would suggest is that a lot of millennials also want to be involved in a socially responsible business. And our Conserva Irrigation business, which is also our most recent business, we have the most territory available in that business. It's a relatively low investment business. It's a simple operating model in the irrigation space, but there's an underlying water conservation theme. And we've been able to help our customers, both commercial customers and residential customers, to generally save about 50 to 60% of the amount of water that they were using in their irrigation system after we have gotten the system back into good working order and then upgraded some of the componentry to more modern technology that allows us to reduce the water consumption. And so as an average American homeowner, 3 out of 4 gallons of water that they use is through the irrigation system. And so people have done a lot inside the home to reduce water, but you're really not tackling the problem until you tackle the irrigation system. And I think the water conservation theme, saving a precious resource, would be something that would be attractive to a lot of millennials.
You mentioned modern technology, and this can be across that brand, and I have follow-on questions about that brand, but you mentioned modern technology, and since we're here on Modern Business, I want to talk a little bit about modern technology. Talk about how you as a franchisor are providing, we'll talk about systems in a second, but specifically about technology that helps enable the local franchisees. Are there a couple of particular vendors that you're working with that are great? Just talk a little bit about the technology that you deploy to help your folks grow.
Each of our businesses have different pieces of technology that we're using to help support the efficient operation of the business model. And we're big believers that we're not going to deploy technology for the sake of technology. We're going to deploy technology where we think it is going to make the business model easier to execute so the franchisee and their teams can execute it more efficiently. In our businesses, we participate in sectors that are generally highly fragmented, mom and pop, unprofessional contractor spaces. A lot of the technology we've deployed commonly be referred to as CRMs or field operating systems, where we're automating some of the communication between our franchisees and their teams and the customers. Because we've learned today's customer wants regular communication about the status of whatever job we're doing at their home.
And text it to me, don't email it to me.
They want to be communicated in multiple different fashions on a regular basis so they know exactly what's happening when. And in a lot of our spaces, our competitors who maybe are out in the field doing the work and they have a cell phone and that's their only form of communication is to check in and check some messages at night, we've been able to automate through technology some of that ongoing customer communication to differentiate our franchisees versus other players in the market.
Got it. What was your entrance into the franchise world? I understand that you have an investment banking background and you then segued into the franchise world. What was the first brand you mentioned earlier? What was the first brand that you got your start with?
I started with Archadeck. When I left the investment banking world after doing merger and acquisition advisory work for many years, I was looking for a business that I could both invest in and lead from an operational perspective and set the strategy and try my hand at growing that business. And I was looking for a business that would be insulated from some of the trends that negatively impact businesses. And this was in the 2006 timeframe. I was looking for a business that would be insulated from maybe having to move offshore, go to Mexico or Eastern Europe or Asia. I was looking for a business that would be insulated from the trend of some industries moving from a retail establishment to online. Sure. or an industry that maybe technology would completely disrupt. And a business like Archadeck,
eliminate the need for it.
Or eliminate altogether. So a business like Archadeck, where we're designing and building outdoor living spaces, that always has to be done local. It always has to be done in the backyard of our customer. You can't do that online. You can't do that offshore. And so that was the thesis originally of finding a company that where the service would have to be performed locally.
I think that's a very, very smart model. And again, for the folks listening, we're here in the convention hall and there's some background noise, some forklifts. We apologize for that. I want to switch over and talk a little bit about you and these couple of rapid fire questions. Who along the way, who were some of your mentors, or at least one of your mentors, and can you share any lessons that you've learned?
I have a mentor that when I was building these businesses and making some of the initial acquisitions in 2008, a gentleman who was on an advisory board at the time, he and I partnered together to acquire the control stake in Archadeck, acquire Outdoor Lighting Perspectives, and then acquire Mosquito Squad, which was a small early stage concept. Mark Mullins is his name. He's unfortunately since passed away. But as we were starting to scale, he taught me a really important lesson by telling me a story in his career. And he said early in his career, he went into a boss's office and asked a question, what do you want me to do about a certain project? His boss looked at him and just stared at him for 30 or 60 seconds and finally said, if I answer that question for you, what percentage of your salary are you going to give to me? And his lesson to me at the time, as we were starting to scale the business, was I couldn't do everything myself. And I had to make sure that I was empowering the team of people that we were building to be able to make decisions the same way I would make them if I was involved in every decision. You can't become a bottleneck in a business as a leader. And that was his way of making sure I understood that.
That is a very good lesson. How do you empower people on your team when it comes to at the franchisor level? And talk a little bit about the culture that you have.
Culture is exactly where it starts. When you get the culture in an organization right, and we work really hard to set the culture in Outdoor Living Brands, then you know the team of people around you, from the senior leadership team all the way down through folks who've recently joined us, they're going to make decisions the way the leadership team would like decisions to be made. And I think it starts with making sure the expectations are crystal clear of how will we define success on any project or in any new business that we're pursuing. What are the resources that are available? And what are the metrics that we're going to use to measure success? So if you have clarity of the vision, clarity of what constitutes success, clarity of the available resources, that allows people, I think, to make sure that they know where they have to go. And the conversations that we then have are about, are we on track, or do we need to recalibrate our strategy or our tactics to get back on track?
What is the vision? Outdoor Living Brands, you have awesome brands in your portfolio. What is as you look at 5 years, as you look at 10 years, what is the vision for the company and for the entire umbrella of Outdoor Living Brands? It's
a great question. And first and foremost, our growth strategy starts with helping the existing franchisees in the systems today to grow their businesses. And as we drive organic growth of the roughly 425 locations, of course, we're pulling along growth of Outdoor Living Brands. Secondly, we want to try to continue to drive the new unit growth across all of the businesses. We envision 5 years out having 1,000+ locations domestically, along with operations in a handful of international markets around the world. And then third, we also see adding additional concepts to our portfolio. We want to add the 6th brand and the 7th brand and someday the 8th brand. And if you think about our focus on outdoor lifestyle and home services, there's some logical places that we will hopefully turn to someday to add other complementary franchise concepts that sell exterior home services to the same consumer, that middle market, upper middle market, affluent homeowner, takes pride in their home and their yard, and it has a busy lifestyle so that they're interested in hiring someone to help them care for their home and their property.
That's excellent. I want to shift gears as we look at the time here. Are you a reader?
I read I don't read that many business books. I read some.
Well, you're out busy building companies.
Yeah, I read for escape, and you'll get a chuckle out of this, I think. My family, when I read a novel just to kind of unwind, I have the ability to shut that book down, and a month later I'll buy that same book because I don't remember reading it. There's only so much hard drive space I have inside, and so I've learned. I did it 2 weeks ago when I was traveling. I bought a book, and I realized about 10 pages in, I'd already read it.
Some of the only novels that I've read Atlas Shrugged. Do you know Ayn Rand? Yep. It's a good book, and The Fountainhead I think was also by Ayn Rand. And then whatever they made us read in school. Yeah. Do you have a favorite novel?
I really don't have a favorite novel. I love, kind of the mystery and suspense, the Baldaccis and the Grishams. I can't remember which ones I've read. On the business side, my favorite all-time business book is Re-Engineering the Corporation, because the simple Hammer and Michael Hammer, and one of the lessons that taught me is business is a game, and there's always a better way to do every single aspect of your business, and you should always be trying to step back and re-engineer whatever process or system that's in place to make it run a little smoother, produce a little better bottom line for franchisees or our own team.
Yeah, I think it was Mark Cuban. I'm not 100% sure if it was Mark, but I'm pretty sure he said business is 24/7 by 365, and your competitor is out there trying to kick your beep. And the interesting thing is you only have to be right once. If you failed 5 times, you can come in and you can buy into Conserva Irrigation brand, and then you're right, and then you go own a market and you grow. On that track, what does an ideal franchisee look like for, let's just pick that brand, for Conserva Irrigation? What does an ideal franchisee look like?
Yeah, we have 3 different types of franchisees in that system. Even though it's still relatively small and early stage, they're clearly coming. One, they're, as we affectionately refer to them, corporate refugees, people who have grown up in corporate America. They wanted to get into business for themselves, but rather than hanging up a shingle, they're going to license a franchise, partner with a business model, training, coaching, support, a brand name, and build that business. 2, we have a number of irrigation contractors that were building a business in their local market, and they've become familiar with our brand and our business model and our focus on repair and maintenance along with system upgrades, and they're converting their business to the Conserva Irrigation brand. And then lastly, we've also had a number of what I'll call green industry participants, someone who's in the landscaping business, or maybe they were number 2 in a local family-owned irrigation business, and they wanted to get into business or diversify an existing business, and they're adding Conserva to do that.
I actually have many people in mind as you talk about those profiles, because it makes sense. If you're used in the home services, actually, my first business, I started a lawn business. It was a funny story. My parents, I wanted a vehicle. My parents told me I had to get a job because I played baseball, and that was literally like my job back in the day. And this was 10th grade. Yep. And so my dad's like, Ryan, I'm not buying you a truck. I had to go get a job, so I made flyers and passed them out when it was snowing. And then just the referrals alone, people just refer you business, and that was the first business I ever built. I want to popcorn back onto the personal side, and I want to ask you a question. What was the first gig out of college or out of high school? What was the first gig that you had? The first job? I don't care if it's cleaning dishes. What was the first thing you did?
My very first job was I did my undergrad at the University of Notre Dame, studied finance, and I wound up being hired by what was Arthur Andersen at the time in their management consulting division. It's what is Accenture today. Okay, yeah. And so I started in a business where big company, lots of training resources, went through their training program, and starting in consulting allowed me to see a lot of different industries in a short 4-year period and a lot of different business functions within those companies in different industries. And I found that consulting is a great way to start a career because you see a lot of different companies, different sectors, and different business functions within those. And it really provided a great starting point and learning for me as I got out of school and started to figure out the work world.
As you did that, as you figured out the work world, everything, maybe for you it was, but is typically not peaches and roses, and you have your ups and your downs. It's about balancing that out and all the rest. What was can you recall back to an experience where you were told no and you just had to figure it out, or you had to do something outside of the box to get your foot in the door or to make something happen, where you just had to use grit and think outside of the box and do something spectacular? Can you think of any experiences?
I go back to when I left investment banking, and I'd had a wonderful career that I enjoyed a lot. It was lucrative, it was engaging, it was fun. But I also, you have a tremendous work ethic in investment banking. I was traveling all the time, working incredibly long hours, and I had 3 young kids at home. And I was not able to have the balance between being a father and a husband and also having a successful career. And so I decided to make a change, and I wanted to find a business that I could invest in and take on a senior leadership role. Well, I had no track record of being a CEO. And so I had to convince people that it was worth taking a risk on and backing me to lead the turnaround of what is our Archadeck business today. And that was not necessarily an easy challenge, because there was no track record to say, look at what I did with this last business that I was running. I was a transaction guy, and now I was turning my hand to operations and strategy and running and growing a company.
Yeah. As you're sitting in front of me today, the CEO and chairman of a very successful brand that owns multiple brands, you trace that back to a single point in time when you didn't have that track record and you had to make that decision. So what would be your parting words of advice to a young entrepreneur who might find themselves in a similar situation? Could you give them a little mini motivational kick?
Yeah, I would say my advice would be take the risk earlier in your career. When you're young in your career, before you have family obligations, house obligations, before you're so embedded in a specific industry or a function, you can take risk in your life. And when I look back over the course of my career, as much as I enjoyed consulting and I really enjoyed merger and acquisition advisory work as a banker, I really love growing and building a company, and I wish I'd started earlier. And so I think my advice to people is, when you're young in life, you have the ability to take risk more so than when you're older and you may have a home and kids and educations that you're trying to fund. So take the risk earlier in your life when you can afford to do so.
We are going to end there because that's excellent advice. Chris Grandpre of Outdoor Living Brands, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.